Hello guys, so we're going to be starting from where we left off, and we're going to be looking at some new concepts and features in Angular 2. One of those features is reactive forms model. We're going to be looking at the concept as well of lazy versus eager loading. We'll be able to figure out the differences between those, and we'll be looking also into Angular ng model. Ng model, according to the angular.io website, helps to organize an application into cohesive blocks of functionality. It is simply a class adorned with ng model. If you remember in the app.model.ts from our application, you have this model and then you decorate it with ng model. So what happens in the ng model is that it takes a metadata object that tells Angular how to compile and run the module code. So individual features in an application can have its own model, and we are going to make use of that in this video. So for example, going back to the post component that we had before, you see that we have all this sort of post list, post new component, and all those. So it's easier for us to group all of these posts and put it in its own module. So that way we'll just be only able to import that module into here. That's the good part of modules. It helps us to separate our concerns. So I'm not going to touch this post for now. We might record a different video to refactor this application in the future, or maybe when we work on another application. But we're going to continue where we left off on the authentication module, and what we'll be doing now is we're going to import reactive forms module here, and we're going to add that to the import array. I'm going to save that, and in the root of our application we need to create another folder. Let's call that authentication folder. Inside this authentication folder we need to create the authentication service file, authentication.service, the TS file, and this is where we're going to be writing all the concerns for our authentication. I'm going to zoom that so that we can all have access to see that as well. So we're going to, just like in every service file that we create, we're going to import the injectable from Angular core. We're also going to import the router from Angular router. We also need to import response from the HTTP library. We also need to import angular2-token, which is the main reason why we're here. We're also going to be making use of observable. So create a string for redirect URL and a constructor. In this constructor we're going to inject the angular2-token as well as the router. So now we create methods for login. The login, as we already know, takes in the email, password, and returns an observable, and inside there we can return this token service, and we can use an object to pass the email word. Can close that out. So we're going to be repeating the same for sign up. Sign up as well takes an email, which is a type of string, and password, which is also a type of string, returns an observable also, and in there we're going to return this the token service dot register. In here we're going to be using the email. Now that's done. We also need to create the method for logout. This is going to be easier. So create a method for logout which returns a void, and that's where we're going to be using the redirect URL that we created. First assign it to as undefined, and then this service, let's sign out, and also redirect the URL to the home page. So that's done, and we need to also check if user is logged in. We also need to check to redirect after login. Check if the user is logged in. If so, redirect to home page. And we also need to reassign this redirect to undefined. And at the end, we now need to make the route to go. So that's it. With that said and done, now we need to create a type of hotlink, because usually if we would just use the normal components for login and logout in our application, we would have some issues at the end of the day. So we need to group our authentication links somewhere in our application. So now let's create a component for that, which is going to be the component that houses our login and sign up buttons, and as well as the logout button. So we create hotlinks.component.ts. Inside here here we're going to import components from Angular core, and we're going to make use of the authentication service here, this authentication service we just created. So from the same folder, now we need to decorate our component with the component decorator and pass in the metadata. Let's assign a selector for that. The selector will be auth links, and we don't need to create a separate URL for this. We don't need to create a separate template for this since it's just going to be 3 buttons. So let's just put it all here. We're going to use the backtick. The backtick is under your escape button. I believe it's the same with Windows and Mac. So you click on that backtick. This is introduced in the new EXs, I believe. So we're going to be using some classes from Semantic UI and from Bootstrap. So let's go back. We already have that imported from other videos, so we're going to be using both of this here. So first thing we're going to create is a form. Inside this form, we give it a class of UI form. That's from Semantic UI. And we also need to create a field which takes in a class first of fields and then a field. And this one takes a class of field. So inside here, we can create the button, and we can give it a router link of login, which we have not created yet. And we're going to create another button as well. Let's just call this one login for now. And another button and another button for sign up. Also, we have not created that yet, but we will soon. And another button for logout, which also we have not created yet. So we can export this class now, and we can use a constructor where we inject the authentication service. And inside this, we can create another function for is logged in, which returns a boolean. This is only going to check if the user is logged in or not. So we can return this service which is what we created here in the authentication service, this function. Also, we're going to be using the reverse of that for logged out. So we can just copy and paste it and then return this not logged in. And we also need to create another method for the main logout function, which we also wrote there. I believe we wrote the logout function. Yeah, this function, we're going to be using that now, and we're going to use it like this, service logout. So we can now go straight, and in here we first need to give it a router link active, and we can check using the function that we just wrote. Is it logged out? If yes, show login button. And we need to do the same for the sign up as well, so we can easily copy from here, because we are going to be showing this login and sign up button when the user is logged out. So we check, is this user logged out? Show the sign up button and the login button. And in the logout, we're going to be checking if the user is logged in. So if the user is logged in, we need to show the logout button. So here we can remove this. So here we're going to be checking if the user is logged in, then show the logout button. So we also need to write to make sure that on click of that, it will trigger the logout function that we created down there, this logout function. So it will, when the user clicks on this button, it will trigger the logout button. When they click on this sign up, it will trigger this router link and show the sign up form, as well as when they click on this login, it will show the login page. So we can decorate this button by applying some classes from Bootstrap, which is button outline, and we need to give it a type of submit, and we can repeat the same for all the other buttons. I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. We have created the auth links for checking the logout and login. We need to use this now in the navbar of our application, and I believe the navbar was here. So this is where we have the navbar. So we just need to add this selector to somewhere here in the navbar, and the best way to add that will be to just add it below this div so that it will be on the right side of our page. So we need to put that in a form tag, and we can give it a class of form inline, and with that done, we can just, so if we save this now, we're going to get an error on our page due to the fact that we have not imported the auth links into our module yet. So let's go and import that. And the name of the module is auth links component. So let's just go to the app module and import from, like I said at the beginning of this video, the app module is one of the first files that get loaded whenever we start any Angular 2 application. So that's why it's returning an error that it does not know what is auth link. But the moment we have it already imported here now we need to add that to the declaration since it's a component. If it were to be a module, we'll be adding it here. So returns an error. What does it say? Template pass is not known. Well, we just imported that. I'm also going to check the terminal. Oh, there's a mistake. I made a mistake with the spelling. So it's authlinks.component, not authLink. So it should work now. Wait, I'm just going to try to restart this. Oh, my bad. So, of course, the authlinks component is inside the authentication folder. So the authentication folder is authentication/authlinks. So crazy. Also, we forgot to import the authentication service into the provider. So we need to include this authentication service into the app module. First we copy that, and then here service, and we need to add that here now. And there's an error in the authentication service, says that angular2-token has no exported member angular2-token. So let's go check what's going on. Authentication service, I believe it's angular2-token service, and here as well angular2-token service there. So it's working now, and we have the login and sign off button right there, but of course this doesn't link to any page yet. So if I click on it now, what I get is an error saying it does not know what those links are. So we need to get that to work, we need to create login folder and sign up folder here, sign up folder, and inside there we need to create a component. Let's call it login.component ts, as well as a sign up component, sign up.component ts. So inside this login component, just as it's with every other component that we create, we import component and on init from Angular core. We're also going to be needing some import form builder, form group, validators, all coming from Angular forms. We also need to import authentication service from, go out of this folder and get me the authentication service from there. And now we can declare the decorator, and we are not going to be using a selector here because we're going to be using a shared form for the login and the sign up. That's the reason why I have decided to use the reactive forms model. We also need to give a styles URL, and for this not to complain, we need to quickly ng on init. Also, we're going to need some variables created. So we create a boolean variable called submitted, and also a form called login form, which is a type of the form group. If you've worked with reactive forms model, you would understand the form group. And we need a constructor as well. The constructor would implement the auth service, so we need to pass in the private. We also need the form builder, and after that we now need to implement this .submitted. At all times when the page is initialized, set submitted to false, and then give the login form and build it with the form builder, grouping it together with values. So we need the email that takes in an empty string, and also tell the validators class to make sure it is required, as well as the password field with an empty string, and make sure that this field is a required field. So with that said, I'm done. We are going to be needing a form, a submit function which takes in a value of any, and inside this submit function we're going to be validating that the the user has already clicked on the submit button, and it's going to use the auth service to log in the user or check if the login details is correct or not. Also, we're going to need to do something after the user has logged in, right? Or maybe after the login fails or something. So we can do after failed, like after the login attempt failed, we need to return an error of any, and also we can just say let this errors field be, let past errors equals to JSON errors body, and we also look through that login errors and give it. So this is going to first of all create a past errors variable, and it passes the errors body. It then loops through this forms control, the login form, and then if this attribute is inside the past errors, then we want to be able to display that as well, to set the error and display it in the browser. So once this is done, we now pick each of these errors and then set it on the login form. So back to the submit, we'll now use this after failed login in the submit function, and we tell it that submitted first of all is true already at this time, and that if it's not valid, if this.login form, so return the login form again. But if everything is okay and if it's valid, then use the login function inside the auth service that we already created and get the value as well as the value of the password, and then we're going to be using observable subscribe to that, and we will use, if you remember, we created this redirect after login in the auth service before, which is this. So it will go to the home page once the user is already confirmed, or it will go to a guided page, for example. So this is all in the documentations. You can read more about it in the documentation for auth token. So this dot after failed login dot bind. So that's it, and we will now create a login.component.html file since we don't have that and we're already referencing it here. We also need to create a login.component.css file. Let's just say login page and a new file. We're not going to use that yet for now. We also need to create a signup.component.css and also .html. So inside this signup.component.ts file, we're going to be doing almost the same thing that we just did here. So as a matter of fact, we can just copy this. We can actually copy from here. So we'll paste that, and I'm going to try to close out of all this to avoid confusion. So sign up, give it a sign up component, sign up like that, and we close this up. And also we need to implement the ng on init based on this implementation. Also we need the constructor, and inside this constructor we're going to be using the auth service again. Going to be using the auth service and the builder. Can copy that again from here, and we also need this as well. So except this one now will not be a login form but a sign up form. So the only difference is, I'll show you guys now. So the only difference is that, let's copy this first. The only difference now is that we're using a sign up form here, and we're already done with, we already made this happen. And also here we need to create a submit form again, and again we can copy this and this. We'll just change some stuff there. So we can change this to after failed sign up there, and also we need to change this to sign up form. We also need to change this to sign up. Let's subscribe, redirect after login, and like that. We also need to change this to sign up, and also this to sign up, and I believe that's it. So we can save that now, close out of this page, and inside here we can just say sign up. So we can test that our pages are working by, at the end of the day, we're still going to have to create a module for here. So I suppose it's just best to create that now and do it auth-routing.module.ts. So inside this auth-routing.module.ts, so we're going to be using this ng module again, just like we already have here. We need this. We also need the router module. We need the authentication service, so we can import that here. We are going to be importing that from current folder, and just like we have done here, first of all create a const route, and we'll pass it an array of picks to the component of login component. and we can now use the ng module decorator to import. What we did here is we used that for root, but this time we're not going to be using the root because we're not in the root route this time, but we're in the child route. So we're going to be using for child, and we pass in the route that we just did here. So we also need to export router model, and we can also pass in providers. The first provider we're going to pass the authentication route. So we can remove this from here now, because we're basically just only using it here. We're not using it anywhere else. And can pass it now, as well as now we can now export, and we can now import that here. And the first place we need to put that is, let's save now and see if our routing is working. No, it doesn't work. It says login component is not part of. I think I will check. First, okay, we already have this imported here, so no need to re-import it again. And also it's complaining about login component.ts cannot find the name, errors body. Let's try to put a dot here as well. So we forgot to change this to sign up. I believe everything should work now. Let's try to refresh. I'm going to, it's complaining about the login component, but we do have it here, so I don't know. It's complaining about this ng. I seem not to understand where it's coming from. Oh wait. Now I understand what's going on. Cannot find the login component. So of course we need to add the login component to a model. Let's create a new file, say authentication.model.ts. I think I know what's happening now. So we need, first of all, we need to understand that we can only use the browser model once, which is in the root module, the app.model.ts. So if we want to create a new module again, we need to use common module instead of the browser module. And we also need the ng module as well. So we can just put that at the top of here. And we need the forms module, reactive forms module. And here, instead of importing the auth routing module here, you can just use it here. And this is the perfect place to use the login and sign up. The login and sign up inputs, so we can use that here as well, and that's how we'll be able to do exactly the same thing. Just copy everything. I get lazy when the video is getting too long, so it's okay. So I suppose I should end this video now and just complete it in the next one. And now we can replace this with common module, and we also need the forms module. We already have that. We also need the reactive forms module. We don't need the HTTP module, but we already got the auth routing module there. So we removed the auth routing module, and we also need not forget to remove it here. And we also don't need any of this here, but we can just leave the array for now in case we'll still use it. We also need to remove this. So we got the declarations, login, sign up, and common module, forms module, reactive forms module, app routing module, and the only thing remaining now is just to change this name, authentication module. So this is housing all of what we've been doing, including this auth routing module. So this authentication module is what we actually need to be using here. So can just import. It can seem a little bit confusing sometimes, but it's actually a very good way to separate your concerns, because what we really need is for this app.model.ts to not be complicated. That's what every professional Angular developer should fight for. Like, we should always look for ways to decluster this app.module.ts because it's one of those files that will load first when your application is loading. So if you want your home page to really load fast, you need to do everything in your power to decluster this app.module.ts, and that's what we're trying to do here. So once we got that saved now, let's check and see that everything is working again. Oh, no provider for authentication service. Oh wait, this is in the same file, so this is the problem. Authentication.module, and here still cannot find the authentication.module.ts. What could be wrong? What could be wrong? Oh shit, I found the error again. Come on, maybe this would fix the error. Yeah, so that fixed the error. The import location was wrong, so we got the login and sign up page working now. So in the next video, I'm going to complete, and I believe I'm going to complete this series of authentication, and the login and sign up will be able to work by then. As you guys can see, this video was getting too long and I was getting impatient, hence the reason for all those very useless mistakes. So I'm sorry about that, and I'll see you in the next video. I'll make sure to upload the next video like tonight or tomorrow morning so that you guys don't have to wait for the next week. The reason why this video took so long for me to record is just exactly because of this. I already knew it, that it's a lot of things, a lot of work for me to do. But it's okay. I will just straight after I upload this one, I will get started with the next one and make sure to upload it tonight or tomorrow morning. Thanks for watching. Bye.